Welcome to the Inner Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Trent, and this is the show where we dive into all things youth athlete development, strength and conditioning, and the mindset needed to thrive on and off the field. Whether you're a parent looking to support your child's athletic journey, a coach seeking fresh insights, or an athlete ready to take your game to the next level, you're in the right place. Before we jump in, make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated on our latest episodes. If you enjoy the show, please give us a like, share it with your friends, and help us reach even more people who can benefit from these insights. Together, we can empower the next generation of athletes to perform at their best. Now, let's get into it.
Now, for us, it's I think for 20-minute sprint times is, the broad jump, the triple hop, and then even the squat jump is actually quite important to actually understand, can they do those exercises or those tests really well? And that's going to give us a real clear idea of how they're likely to be. But if their running mechanics and running technique is off for whatever reason, and we know that they're quite explosive in those three tests, it means we can actually start to work more on the skill-specific component rather than developing just the components of fitness. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. And I think, like using tools such as RSI, so like Reactive Strength Index, it's a really good tool just for, kind of assessing where that athlete's at and kind of, what category they fall into. And then, some macho, some great jump height, but poor ground contact time, and then contrary. So like they can produce their force, not quickly. Yep. Others, they can produce their force quickly, but they might lack that big force output as well. So I think, it's definitely a really important tool to be able to kind of see where you place the eggs in the basket, and then, you might place a couple more eggs in this side whilst maintaining the other properties as well.
Correct, yeah. And then the other one is like mobility and stability. Now, if you're coming back from like some sort of soft tissue injuries, or you find yourself more biased towards one side, this is where the mobility and stability, like those screening tools that we utilize here, can start to identify those restrictions for the athlete. So if we're looking like a sport, like say I always go like soccer or basketball, you want to be able to have access through your hips. And I find that now a lot of kids actually struggle to gain access in the hips, and when you can gain access to your hips, you can start to use your adductors and your glutes to help stabilize the leg, and you'll be able to like load up your leg more like a spring and be able to utilize it to generate more power, to be able to cover more distances or be able to take the hits a little bit easier, rather than trying to like muscle your way through it. You're actually creating more leverage for yourself moving forward.
I think as well, sports puts you in some really, really weird positions. You're going to find yourself sprawled out on all fours, in a weird twisting, turning motion. And if you haven't got the mobility to access that, you're not going to be stable and strong in that. So then, say it's footy, for instance, you're trying to get a ground ball, it's on a weird angle. You haven't got the hip mobility or the ankle mobility to kind of actually get down there. You might not even get there. The opponent might beat you to the ball. So I think it's definitely really something important to address and just help, with overall movement as well. Because, you can definitely see a lot of restrictions like in the ankles affecting, all their lower body power stuff, their squats, pretty much every movement, like even the way they walk as well. So, it's pretty important that it gets addressed early and not just kind of pushed to the side and made worse.
And later on, remember, we're training the brain, and the brain takes a long time.
It does,
to learn, to be able to signal the muscles to do the right things and to switch on and switch off, and, certain muscles at certain times.
24 years, fully developed.
Yeah, I know. Anyways. And then we talk about energy systems. So this is one of the things we've been a lot of the members been pushing a lot more now, is developing the energy systems, developing more of that aerobic base in the off season now. And I was talking to someone who's associated with Heidelberg, and Heidelberg, they won their NPL this year. Yeah. And the men's team, Box Hill won the women's. The men's team, what they did was they had a big off season, and apparently their off season was really focused on, I think they'll train 4 or 5 days a week, so pretty much almost like a full-time team, even though they're a large chunk of part-timers. Like, they actually did really well in their cup games early this year. Yeah, unfortunately, again knocked down by Newcastle in the final.
Yeah, they should have had a pen, I think, earlier.
Yeah, it was like in the first 10 minutes or something like that. Anyway, it was a dubious call.
You do, hey?
A dubious lack of calling.
Yeah.
And what they had noticed is like it's just like that long, I think, thinking really far ahead in terms of the conditioning side. And I know a lot of teams and coaches will be focusing more on that conditioning side and the repeat sprintability and really developing that really earlier on. And, that's going to be our focus for the Bentley Greens girls, is focusing on the conditioning side and getting them actually physically prepared. And because it's only going to be harder in the pre-season, it's going to get more difficult compared to the off-season, where we're really developing that base for them, and then we want them to be able to play solid football, play hard attacking football, play up the whole time, and be able to keep sustained pressure for 90 minutes or 90 plus minutes with them. And then ideally the biggest focus for us is going to be like I said before, the repeat sprintability. And I think, sometimes in the off season, and you probably have your own takes on like footy camps and all that jazz as well, and times of when you push your athletes kind of like to a borderline breaking point as well. I think there's actually value in not doing this in the off season, but doing this in the pre-season, is creating opportunities to push them really hard as individuals and also as a group, almost creating a situation where it's going to be way harder than the game itself. So kind of like going to like that real deep dark place. Yeah.
And learn to live in the dark,
Yeah, to be okay in that uncomfortable nature. Yeah. And knowing that it's going to be hard, you're going to get out, you're going to be okay in it, and just digging deep. And I think that has a real strong carryover to the game itself. So when the game is in the last 10, 15 minutes, you're down by 1 or 2, you've got to dig deep in order to get yourself across the line, and less like it, or for whatever reason, you turn the ball over, and developing that mentality to drop back, or at least create some sort of defensive pressure to prevent them from scoring.
Yeah, well, I think like that is going to help build their like mental resilience. So when the going gets tough, they don't just drop their head and fold over. They dig deep, and I think it's going to come back to a bit of discipline as well. Like I think kids nowadays want to kind of take the easy route out. They want to do the least amount of work for the most amount of results, and sometimes it's not always the case. Sometimes especially with the conditioning, you got to work your ass off to get you where you need to be for the season. You can't just fluff around and do little dribs and drabs here. It's got to be committed.
Yeah, sustained, committed.
Yeah.
No, that's good. And then the structure of a weekly schedule. So now for a lot of our kids in the off season at the moment, we're looking at younger athletes, age between 10 and 14 years old, and we're looking at least 2 strength sessions a week. And if they're doing training and conditioning work outside of here, or even just like general play as well, or if they're doing a summer sport for the school, if they're doing that once or twice a week as well. So we're really looking at just keeping them physically active, developing some new skills, just continually building or gradually building up their fitness in this off season, and then later on down the track, and then we can start to look at ramping things up during that time as well.
Yeah, and I think very, very important that there's a speed session in there, whether it's with the S&C or it's probably going to be achieved at training as well. But hitting some max velocity. So that you maintain that speed, because as S&C coaches, we know that's kind of the first thing to go. But kids, they're not going to know that they lose their speed, and they're going to wonder, why have I gotten so much slower? It's like, well, you've stopped sprinting, and it's
not a video game.
No,
you can just save progress.
Exactly, you've got to maintain it. So
yeah.
I think that'd be something to add.
Yeah, you got to like anything, right? You got to continually to do the thing that you want to maintain, or you have to do more of the thing that you want to get better at moving forward, and be consistent with it as well. And then with our older kids, they're 15 upwards, they're in at least 3 times a week doing some sort of strength work, and then we can start to look at doing a little bit more like conditioning. So they're at an older age, the rate of growth is probably slowed down a little bit more now, and they can start to tolerate a little bit more, comparable to our younger kids that wouldn't be able to tolerate because they're still going through that formal growth period.
Like they don't really need it as well. The younger kids, like they're not performing at a super high level,
and their games are a lot shorter as well.
Yeah, like modified. Yeah, shorter fields.
Yeah,
like it's just the whole, I think, focus of that is just learn the game, learn to love the game.
Yeah, and I found that quite interesting. Yeah, it's like, the kids actually look. You always hear parents' comments on the sideline and stuff like that. And it's like, they just look really unfit. And it's like, we got to do more conditioning. I'm like, you got to get the kid to love the game to be able to have sustained success.
Exactly.
The reason, they got to be able to want to come back.
No,
like 100%. It shouldn't be a push to get your kid to training. Yeah,
if you've got to push them to get to training, and then you're trying to push them to do conditioning on top, that's just gonna, it's a one-way ticket to, I don't want to do this anymore.
No. But there's some kids that actually really want to do the conditioning, but they're kind of few and far between.
Yeah, and chances are those that are kind of have that mindset already, they're probably going to go on to be not necessarily higher performing, but they've probably got a higher likelihood of making those high performance teams because they've probably got that discipline and mindset. Yeah. As long as they can maintain that throughout their, as they grow and through school.
Yeah, and then we want to emphasize quality over quantity. So it's a big focus. As long as you're putting quality reps in, we don't want to create a whole bunch of junk volume just for the sake of doing more running, more conditioning. It's quite interesting now that the volume that you do, if you're doing moderate volume or low to moderate volume, and then you're doing relatively high intensity, you don't really need to be doing too much more on that side. But for some people, if you're doing the very moderate or higher volume but lower intensity, eventually you're going to have to increase the intensity at some point as well, because you're not creating enough of a stimulus beyond what your body's normal homeostasis is.
Yeah, then it all comes back to that stimulus. Even in the weight room, we still have to drive that stimulus. If we go through the motions, we're not going to grow. If we're taking everything to failure all the time, leaving nothing in the tank, we're just going to cause muscle damage, and you're just not going to be able to recover, and then you're just going to be in a vicious loop. So I think making sure that stimulus is perfect hit on the nail is super important, especially in the pre-season. It kind of goes back to that intensity ramping up, right? If that stimulus is too much too early, it's just gonna, you're taking one small step forward, two big steps back, and you're just kind of back to where you were before you even started your pre-season.
100%. And then obviously with school holidays coming up as well, is just being a little bit more flexible in terms of what you're doing. I think this is a real key thing. I got heaps of people going away for Christmas. I got someone going to the UAE in Egypt for a holiday. I'm like, all right. But they're going to be flexible. I've already spoken to them about their trip. In terms of, all right, in the UAE, you got, obviously, I'd say just go running it early in the morning or late at night, because it's obviously going to be too hot to do it during the day. And it's a nice way just to see, I guess the city and the scenery.
Yeah.
Moving forward, and more likely you're going to have access to, hotel gyms and stuff like that. So I'd say, when you're there, maybe you can plan ahead now to see if it actually has a hotel gym, and just utilize that and just keep your sessions to 45 minutes. Yeah,
short and sharp. I mean, at the end of the day, you're there for a holiday.
Yeah,
enjoy your holiday. If you can sneak a couple sessions in whilst you're there, great. But it's definitely something you want to try, and not just let yourself do nothing. Because then, same thing, if you're gone for a month, that's a massive chunk.
Yeah,
you just kind of. Well, not back quite at square one, but would have atrophied quite a bit.
Yeah, you just want to put yourself in a bit of a holding pattern. Yeah. That's probably the best way to put it. So if you're away for 3 or 4 weeks, you still want to have some sort of training whilst you're away. So if it's taking a footy with you, taking a basketball with you, or something like that, just to keep the touches up. It could be 20 minutes, half an hour. Just kind of thinking a little bit more forward in that sense, and I'd say just get it done, over and done with before breakfast, and just have breakfast and enjoy the rest of your day. That would be my mentality anyways, going on holidays. But I know depends on if you're traveling to different locations and you're always on the move. But it depends on your situation moving forward. I know one of the Bentley Greens girls came back, and she went over to the US for several weeks, and she had a plan. She planned to go like hiking and camping and whatnot, and she still managed to get the training in at various locations. Not ideal, but you make it work at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think one thing I've noticed is, especially like the members in here, they seem to be a lot more keen in training whilst they're away. Like I've had several conversations with them, like I'm going to, Bali or wherever it is for a couple of weeks, what can I do? Yeah. And then we can just, send them a modified program or like send me some photos of the hotel gym and I'll write something up for you.
Yeah.
And go about it that way. Like, yeah, even this morning when I was at Cornish, like one of the kids, I think they were in like week 3, and he's like, can you like give me like a program similar to what we do here that I can do, at home over the school holidays? So it shows that they're definitely interested in kind of making sure they're maintaining what they've built.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Let's get a sign up here. That's right. And then obviously we talk about if we transition back to the pre-season and getting back into the swing of things. So we're post-Christmas, post-New Year's, post-festive season to some degree. We want to start reintroducing the intensity. So we want to go more moderate volume, moderate intensity for the first couple of sessions, even probably the first week. You might introduce a little bit of sprint work, but keeping it relatively short. The distances, you might only do 2 efforts that are, 90, 95%, just to kind of get the legs familiar with ticking over at that speed. And then as the weeks start to go on, you can start to incorporate a little bit more. So it's sticking with that 5 to 10% rule when we're talking about progressive overload when it comes to the training, and then start reintroducing change of direction. So this is what I find really interesting is a lot of clubs, like I said, many podcasts throughout on the Inner Athlete podcast, is a lot of clubs don't do any speed work, don't do any running technique work or anything like that at the junior level. And this would actually go the same for change of direction as well. So when we start, so a lot of teams will start doing like scrimmages, like, they might do with soccer, they might do 6-a-side, 5-a-side or something like that. And there's obviously confined space, change of direction is a lot more important. They don't start to incorporate those components of, just teaching them how to load into the hips, change of direction, shifting your center of gravity, to the inside or to the direction that you want to go, getting your feet to turn over. Like none of that is really taught, or they kind of get like these hurdles and do like this fancy footwork stuff and, or speed ladders and just like going in and out like choppy feet and all that stuff. It kind of is, I would say, more meaningless than anything else. I'm like, yes, as a neural warm-up, just a generally warm-up, yeah, it'd be fine.
Yeah, but they're not going to get faster or anything like that from that.
If you're looking at converting that into the game, I was like, you will not do it.
No. Yeah, when you're going to be running on a ladder in a soccer match, it's very controlled. And I think, like when they do those small-sided games, like there is obviously going to be that agility and change of direction component. But yeah, same thing like you mentioned, they're not actually learning how to do it the most efficiently. And like running comes back to being efficient, like you said earlier. Like the more efficient we can get them to move, the more they can output, the longer they can output for as well.
And the more they can do of it.
Yeah, and I think there's a bit more of like an old school mentality, like, that kind of stuff gets covered in like the trainings and games. And like to some degree it does, but same thing, you can't really focus on the specifics, like the turnover, the shin angles, that kind of thing, making sure they're putting themselves in the best position to then express their strength and their power.
Yeah, and especially creating leverage moving forward. So I say, last season working with the NPL girls is creating leverage and putting your body in the best position to be able to do specific tasks, whether it's the contact work that we've discussed numerous times before, developing that confidence, and making sure that actually we're using this time to actually break bad patterns and bad habits. So a lot of teams, I watched a clip, it was the Women's United, Manchester United, during one of their warm-ups. They actually did a little bit of contact work. I think they did a shoulder bump, and then swap sides, shoulder bump again, and then did one in the air, and then swap sides again again whilst they're jumping in the air. And I was like, oh, well, that's actually a good idea. Good idea to actually incorporate that. But if we really want to strip it down, we actually need to, with the junior girls, actually teach them how to initiate contact, but also to be able to take the contact.
Yeah.
And this is what I was taught back in my rugby days, is if you're going to tackle, you got to learn how to be tackled as well, how to fall into the contact so you're not hurting yourself, you're not hurting the other player, that you're getting your head out of the way, lead with the shoulder, hit stick, driving with the legs, you're not you're not trying to hit them with the arms or do an arm, what we'd call like an arm tackle, or like a seal tackle, like we see people, use the arms and the hands clap together.
Yeah.
So little things like that is like, it adds up over time. We want to start breaking down these habits. Yes, they are more skill specific for the field, but it has the same concept and principles at play, that we need to kind of teach these skills now, continue to reinforce it and microdose it as the season rolls on.
Yeah. And it's like, it can be just like small things, like even like, I know footy rugby, like with tackling, one easy way to see where they're going is to look at their hips. Their hips are going to tell you where they're going, like rather than looking at the ball or looking at their eyes, just look at their hips. Yeah. And you'd be able to, kind of read their movements a bit better. Yeah. But then, same thing, you've got to practice it, otherwise you're not going to do it in game. You're not going to do it under pressure when you're fatigued.
Correct, yeah. And then I think, wrapping up is the off season is really just looking at that rebuild side. Rebuild the individual of what they would like to see on the field. That's probably the best way to put it. Yeah. For the next season, how do they want to express their skills and their ability to play on the field? We're doing a little bit of goal setting, a bit of a self-reflection and audit during that time, and then obviously getting some coaches and parents feedback from that side, and then we start to build them back up from that perspective, and then as we start addressing the specific needs, we can start to work that into, their lifestyle. So training, like the sports training, club training is obviously reduced or backed off completely, so that we can start to increase the training in here or in a gym setting, or we can start to incorporate some running and conditioning work that they do outside by themselves. And then as the season starts as the pre-season starts to roll in, then we can start to increase the complexity and making it a bit more sport specific in terms of the movement patterns that we're exposing them to now as well. And then starting to create, once they've developed the skills and the movement patterns and we reinforce that, is developing the conditioning component associated with that as well. Because strength power is really, you need to start it relatively early, but it can be easy. It's pretty easy to maintain it. Yeah, I think that's a key feature. Yeah. Speed, on the other hand, unfortunately, no. And it does drop off relatively quickly. Yeah. So it's got to be every week. Yeah, at least once a week. Yeah. So whether that is like linear work, whether some curvilinear, whether that is doing some 505, whether it's like some sort of reactive component involved as well. As long as you're moving fast. Yeah, just get those legs turning over fast. Yeah, quite literally. And then even incorporate into a game sense as well. And then at some point, you're going to have to like really put them under pressure and really test it, and then develop more the mental fortitude for them moving forward. And I think that's probably the biggest part where some athletes really do struggle. Can you sit in that hurt locker or that acid bath? Yeah. To be like, I'm going to be okay. I just got to continue to work through it. Just got to weather the storm. Yeah. No, I think that's a big thing that I think a lot of youth athletes are probably missing, is that mental dexterity and that, like, I guess I'm going to say toughness, but that ability to push through. I think it's a common shortfall, I'd say. Yeah, I will say this: there's a couple of sports that do it really well. I reckon swimming does it really well. Because what they'll do is they'll do like a swim camp, and they'll do for between 3 and 5 days, for example. But they're doing 2-a-day sessions. So they might swim in the morning, swim in the evening, and then they might do like 2 or 3 gym sessions, throughout that week. But it's really just like a real concentrated time to train hard, eat well, eat a lot. Get a lot of sleep in, and then you'll notice that when they come back to training, 3 or 4 days later, and they gradually work their way back up again because it is a large volume of work. And that actually starts to almost like spring back and actually feeling a lot better during that time. So sometimes you do need that real concentrated block of conditioning, but you have to develop it to the point where they're going to be able to tolerate that.
Yeah, it's not just going to burn them out.
No.
Yeah. I think one thing as well that you briefly mentioned is nutrition. It's probably off-season is the perfect time to really dial that in. Set out those habits, just like, your game day training fueling habits that you can then carry into your pre-season, which I know a lot of the youth and even the parents, they have a general idea of what to be eating, but they might not have the best idea as to when they should be eating that or how much as well. I think a lot of the kids, and I'm probably seeing this in the swimming, is I think a lot of kids are actually underfueled given all the amount of activity they're doing. Like, how much like their brain uses just in a day, their play at school, lunch recess, their trainings, study, everything. Like the amount of calories that they'd actually be burning would be ridiculous, and they wouldn't know it. So I think that's one thing that parents could definitely look to help encourage their youth athletes with, and just make sure that they're fueling adequately, making sure that you're setting up those habits so that when you go into pre-season, it's second nature, and then you can just carry that into your season and so on and so forth.
Yeah, you're less worried about thinking. You can just focus on doing.
Exactly, yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, I think we'll leave it there today. If you really like this podcast, please like, share, subscribe, all the wonderful things. Help us continue to get the message out to parents moving forward. It's great to see that the podcast is global as well. Yeah. So we're over in Europe and the US, and you can find us on the normal channels of Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, and all those wonderful places. Until the next one, see ya.
You have just listened to the Inner Athlete Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with the release of weekly episodes. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram to get great tips on all things youth athlete development and youth mentoring.